Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, will hear arguments this morning in a historic case involving Donald Trump and his claim of absolute presidential immunity. Trump's legal team argues presidents have immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts taken while in office. Special counsel Jack Smith's office contends presidents are not above the law and that even if they're eligible for immunity for some official acts, Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election was not an official presidential act. Trump's immunity claim already has been rejected by two lower courts, and the special counsel argues justices should send the case back to U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan to begin that trial. Lisa, what do you expect to hear in court today? And what we've heard so far is that perhaps these justices, even the conservative justices, are very skeptical of the idea that a president is immune from anything.
I think what I'm looking for in terms of today's argument is to hear how much allowance certain of the justices might give to the idea that presidential immunity is appropriate in certain cases, and to listen to hear whether they're trying to make a decision solely in this case that sort of reserves for themselves the right to make a broader ruling on presidential immunity at a later point in time. For example, they could say Trump is absolutely not immune based on the allegations of this indictment. Whether a former president can be criminally immune is something we would decide at a later date when the facts present itself. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that Jack Smith's folks spend a lot of time on their heels in the back end of their reply brief, which is where they cover all the contingencies. I'll call it the even if section of their brief. If they end up in that territory for a lot of their argument, even if, for example, certain of these things are official acts, there are others that are not official acts. Even if he has immunity for official acts, we can still consider evidence of those official acts as part of the largely private conspiracy. Those kinds of arguments, if the justices drag them into that territory, you know that this is not going to trial anytime soon.
So, Sam Stein, let me read you the lead editorial in the Wall Street Journal today, talking about the Supreme Court must consider the presidency, not merely the fate of one former president. They write this: the burden on the justices will be finding a balance that recognizes the unique duties of the presidency, while also holding presidents accountable for genuine law breaking. A president needs to be free to make controversial decisions without having to worry that he'll be prosecuted for them after he leaves office, but he shouldn't be free to commit crimes that are unrelated to the office. And then they go back to Nixon v. Fitzgerald, 1982, where the Supreme Court ruled that the president has absolute immunity from civil lawsuits for acts within the outer perimeter of his presidential duty. So that is the question here. Did what Donald Trump do, if you're looking at Nixon, could you define what he did in and around January 6th as being in the outer perimeter of the presidency? Of course, for you or me, and I think most people watching would say, of course not. But that certainly is the question the Supreme Court has to be careful with, because, again, whatever holding they come down with will be applied to future presidents as well. And we don't want every president leaving office being indicted by a hostile Justice Department.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously an extremely weighty case. Even if it's the designs to get it to the Supreme Court were not weighty at all. And by that, I mean, it's very evident that the Trump's legal team wanted to do this just to throw sand in the gears and to delay their trial until after the election. Now, as to the specifics, you know, Jack Smith's operation has been very clear. The stuff that happened on January 6th is inherently not about the acts of the presidency because Trump had lost. I mean, he had lost the election, and so therefore it is not a presidential act, and therefore he should not get immunity for it. Whether the justices see it that way is a whole nother matter. But look, I think this is pretty evident that what's happening here is that Trump's team wants to just muck things up. I don't think that there's anything more to it. They want to delay it. They want to get this out from the election, and ideally they want to see Trump win and then just dispense with the matter. But I think the Journal's editorial, there's nothing inherently debatable or objectionable about it. Of course, presidents should have some level of immunity for acts they take in office. The question is whether it should be blanket immunity. I think in that front, the vast majority of the legal profession is on one side saying, no, there should not be blanket immunity.
And muck things up, of course, is a very technical legal term that
Yes.
Sam has just
Yes.
given.
I studied law for many years to come up with that term. Yeah.
And your money paid back, Sam. Well done. Good investment.